So we have an empty microphone here, begging for someone to come sit. Who's next? Who wants to come up, share something, ask something? Come on down. We should have like the Price is Right music. Is that what we have? This is an old reference. Wow.
I think the Price is Right is still a thing.
Is it? Actually, it is. I don't watch terrestrial television anymore.
Oh, how hoity-toity
Well,
of you.
cord cutting. I mean,
right.
I'm not trying to be arrogant. Hi.
Hello.
So come up and join the mic a little closer. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Lauren.
And where are you from, Lauren?
Northern Virginia,
Arlington.
Arlington.
Okay. So you didn't have to come as far as Austin, Texas, but Northern
about
Virginia.
2 hours.
It's great. Best fit type.
I'm definitely a TJ. Started out as an INTJ, kind of going through a type journey right now.
Okay. So you're in a type journey, possibly open to other things, but identified INTJ for a while.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you want to talk about tonight?
Well, I wanted to ask you two. You've been doing a lot of small group coaching over the last year or two. You've mentioned it in several podcasts that have dropped recently. And I wanted to ask whether there are emerging themes or things that have surprised you or that you have realized from all of this volume of coaching that you've done lately.
That's a really good question.
Surprises about people and type? Like maybe be like carve this down to a little more specific of a question, maybe. Like frame it a little tighter.
Okay, things that people are hungry for, things that people are struggling with, looking for instruction on. You all have been coaches for a long time, so you have a lot of experience under your belt. But I'm really curious what you've seen as the emerging themes or trends in the last year or two.
Right. You thought you were doing me a favor by making it more specific, but now she's actually asked for me to remember what people are asking about. So now you're pulling on my memory, and I'm like, oh, what are people asking about? So thank you, by the way, Lauren, for asking. I appreciate that because it's like what you're curious about. What's come up for us?
I've noticed from my perspective, first of all, the low-hanging fruit, a lot of people, this is surprising, a lot of people have expressed, I feel like I'm responsible to change the world and solve all the problems of the universe. Like there's so many big issues and problems. And I wish I just had permission to be a little more local in my life. Just zoom in on the people around me, maybe my community. I feel this like responsibility toward this epic thing. Can you guys tell me if it's okay just to be a little bit more small, like focused a little more small, a little bit more tighter focus? That's the big theme I've seen emerge from a lot of people we've coached lately, especially since lockdown and the pandemic and all of that stuff. That seems to be an emerging theme that I've noticed off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. That is one. And I think it's generational. Like we propagandized pretty hard certain generations that they were going to be the people who saved us from ourselves. And so I think that there's almost feels like a responsibility that they're supposed to be the ones who solve all the world's problems. And then there's also simultaneously an assumption that if they're the ones who are going to solve the problems, then these older generations must have been the ones that originally destroyed everything. And it's like, well, no, we're both real smushed up against each other on the timeline of a long stretch of humanity that did plenty of, laying groundwork for both problems and solutions. So I think you might be right on that one. Do you have something to say on that piece, like an aha, or is it okay if I toggle over to the thing that Lauren first said, which are what are the insights you've come up with?
Absolutely. I was just sharing something that I've noticed that people are talking a lot about.
And to speak to that, by the way, I think people absolutely should give themselves permission to keep their ambitions of saving the world to a manageable chunk. Because if everybody is doing something for community, for their families, like if they're just, they're staying at a smaller level, playing at a smaller level, but doing that really well, and you stitch all of that together, I think then that makes a big impact. So that would be my opinion on that. But I want to talk about the themes that have come up. And I know that this routes back to questions people have asked. I just don't remember. I realized I'm kind of like I heard this thing about servers. that they remember what every single person asked for, or like every single person ordered until the bill is paid, and then they just wipe it. And you go, what did that person order? They're like, I don't know, right? I'm completed that. And unfortunately, that ends up happening with me with like a disturbing amount of things. Like once the thing is done, my brain just like wipes it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so terrible at coming up with actual examples. Like, give me an example of that. I'm like, examples, that's my Achilles heel. But I can go abstract. So the two major things that have come up, and you'll probably have heard me mention it in the podcast, and we're running a program on this because it was a really big aha for me, is this idea that the first four functions are in a descending order of certainty. And when I realized that, and I think we even did an entire podcast episode on personality types and uncertainty, that feeling of uncertainty is so corrosive for people. Like, we hate feeling uncertain. Certainty is a security blanket for us. And there's a part of us, and I would call it that fourth function, the inferior. We call it the 3-year-old. It's also called the anima or animus, many names. But that part of us is a place that it doesn't matter what work we do there. It doesn't matter how good we get at it. It doesn't matter the skill development. It doesn't matter the amount of integration work. The babadook of it is that it is always going to carry with it a sense of uncertainty. Like, are we doing this right? Or like, am I doing it like everybody else? And unlike the third function, which is a place of uncertainty, but we can calm ourselves down if we get approval from others that go, no, you did that well. And so that's why we do the dog and pony show in that third tertiary function. We're like, we're doing it right? And so we like present it to other people, like children showing their toys, right? And they're like, yeah, that's really good. And it's like, yeah, right? So that's the place of that third function. But that fourth function is just always going to be uncertain. So that's one of the reasons, by the way, why people say it's the beginning of the shadow, because we have a tendency to just not want to look at it because it creates that unsettling feeling of uncertainty. And that means that it's a function that is incredibly important for us to build a relationship with, and that we are always going to feel uncomfortable in that building of the relationship. So how do you reconcile that, right? How does one reconcile that this imperative, important part of who they are is always going to carry with it the unsettling feeling of uncertainty? And the two things that came up for me was, one, we have to make peace with uncertainty. We just have to, right? Because it's not going anywhere. The only time it goes someplace is when we turn our heads away from it. It doesn't actually leave. It's just we're not paying attention to the feeling. But it's like that. But there's a bunch of content there that we need to look at. So we have to look uncertainty in the face, and we have to make peace with it. And that fourth function gives us an opportunity to have a part of ourselves that we are identified with, that we understand is important for us, that we intrinsically, instinctively recognize as a fire inside of us. Linda Behrens calls it our aspiration. Robert Johnson calls it the inspirer of life. And so we know we have to have it, but every time we look at it, am I doing it right? What am I missing? So we have to make peace with uncertainty in order to have an experience of whole self. And that led me to the second realization, which is whether by design or accident, that is really good for us because it gives us access to a sense of humility. If we have a part of us that we always ask if I'm doing this right, we can never get too big for our britches, right? It's like an enforced humility packet inside of us. And humility is imperative for it allows us to become the kind of person other people want to hang out with, right? If we're not humble, if we don't have a sense of like owning our imperfections and owning that there's, some stuff we're just never going to be good at, and making peace with that and resting into it, then we're the kind of people nobody wants to hang out with, right? Because we're arrogant. And so there's a part of us that like making peace with uncertainty and that deeply unsettling part is actually humanizing. And that relationship is, I mean, again, whether by design or accident, it's a really important piece to Robert Jensen says in the book, that our anima or animus, that fourth function, we need to create a relationship that's almost like two hands pressing together. And that means getting as close as humanly possible to a part of ourselves that makes us feel deeply uncomfortable. And if we can do that and hang there, and we can make that happen for ourselves, then we create a bridge to all sorts of content that is hard for us to look at, but introduces us to the whole package. So so that's been a big aha for me, is making peace with uncertainty, and allowing ourselves the experience of humility with that, is how we get to know who we truly are. And it's how other people get to know who we are as well. So that's been a big one for me.
Yeah. I would go into mine, but we spent all the time on yours. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just thinking. I think so those are some of them. And I think the other kind of the meta answer to your thing that I've noticed is a lot of people are struggling a lot right now with a lot of things. And I know that everybody wants to be online, and I'm glad that we have this venue here for some people to come out and connect with each other, because I feel like we're the most connected we've ever been as humans. And I watch people struggling and reporting that they want more connection, but they either have circumstances that are like logistically challenging for it, or they don't know how to go create it. Like they don't know exactly what to do to go make the friends, connect to the tribe, figure out who they can be around. And I think in tandem with that, then the other emerging theme a lot is people are, and again, we're not going to address all this. I'm just giving you kind of a list of some of the things that come up in coaching. People are really looking to go do something, like kind of on that like little leader idea, like that smaller framework. They're like, I want to do something in the world, but I feel overwhelmed. I think it's a feeling of overwhelm that a lot of people are having. I want to have friends. I want to have community. I want to do something big. I just feel so much chaos in all the things that I see. And so I think a lot of our work is really helping people strip away a lot of the excess and get down to a sense of self. And I think that's why we come back to personality type. It really helps us get to a center point of, we're navigating, all of us are navigating a very postmodern, fragmented world. Like everybody here, we all have to live in this reality. It's got digitization and a weird linear stuff going on, like all this everywhere. We've got to figure out how to do this as humans. And I think people are struggling a lot with it. And I think with our coaching, we've helped people understand, oh, wait, I've got the tools that I take with me in my cognition, how I learn information, how I make decisions. And there's ways that I can move through the world and access these parts of myself and bring it out into my gifts. And helping people identify that is a lot of what we spend time doing in those sessions, and really honing in on those things in a nuanced and detailed way. And it takes time. It takes effort. You've got to kind of buy in that this is something that can work for you and all those things, which our students and clients often do. But I would say those are some themes that I've also seen emerge, just as like a little checklist. Maybe we'll talk about it on a future podcast or something, like how to address all those things specifically.
I have one more thing to piggyback off of that, but I know it's going to be like another 10 minutes.
Oh.
So should we do a part 2?
We can do a part 2.
Okay.
I do want to hear from some more energies though, since we have a wonderful studio audience here.
That's true.
Maybe we can roll into it a little bit later. Can you maybe tag it for later?
I'll tag it.
We'll see what happens.
All
How's
right.
that sound?
All right.
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you both.
Yeah,
Give her a hand. I appreciate it. Who else?